They always said I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. Honestly, that was an understatement. My crib had silk sheets imported from Italy. By age 10, I had a personal tennis coach and a miniature race car. My life was set, trophies, tailored suits, Ivy League bound. I was Daniel Rothmore III, heir to the Rothmore fortune, future CEO of the Rothmore Enterprises empire. Everything had a name on it: Rothmore Leather, Rothmore Resorts, Rothmore Private Equity. And me, I was just another thing stamped with the family name. I wasn't supposed to fall in love. Not like this. Not with her. And certainly not when I already had a fiancée who came with her own private jet and a vineyard in Tuscany. It started at a bookstore. Yeah, a bookstore. I wasn't even supposed to be there. My driver took a wrong turn in the old district. My family calls it the cracked part of town. Like it's an old porcelain plate that no one's bothered to fix. I told him I'd walk the last block. It was early spring, soft sunlight flickering through rusted street lamps, and I needed a break from all the fake smiles and boardroom futures. Then I saw her. She was sitting cross-legged on a wooden stool, behind the counter of Harper's Book Nook. Her fingers stained with ink, and the scent of lavender floating in the air like a whispered secret. She had dark curls pinned messily with a pencil, and a smudge of dust on her cheek that made her look more real than anything I'd seen in months. She wasn't posing. She wasn't trying. She just was. I should have walked away. Should have remembered I had a dinner that night with Elisa's parents, a $10,000 wine tasting. But I stepped inside instead. She didn't look up at first. Just kept sketching something in the corner of a yellowed notebook, biting her lip like the world would fall apart if she didn't get it just right. Cleared my throat. She glanced up. Her eyes weren't particularly wide or bright like the women in the magazines my mother collects, but they were warm, kind, and a little curious, like she was trying to figure out whether I was lost or just another rich boy pretending to slum it for the aesthetic. "Hi," I said, suddenly very aware that my watch alone probably cost more than her rent. "Hi," she answered. "Looking for something? Or just trying to avoid your real life for a few minutes?" I blinked. That was the moment I fell. Not all at once, but the floor under my feet started to shift, and I think some part of me knew I'd never walk the same way again. Her name was May, short for Malin, which her mom had chosen from a poem she loved in college. She told me that 2 hours later, while we sat on the floor between the poetry and art sections. I pretended to browse a copy of Whitman just so I wouldn't seem like I was lingering, even though I was doing exactly that. I bought a book I didn't need and left without asking for her number, because I was engaged to Elise Harrow, of Harrow and Lang Real Estate. Our marriage had been a business deal sealed before Elise even had braces. Our families had been planning it since the Bush administration. We were supposed to merge not just our last names, but our portfolios. And Elise, she wasn't cruel. She was elegant, graceful, raised to be a queen in a marble world. We shared the same social circles, the same vacation spots. But when I looked at her, I didn't feel anything crack open in my chest. With May, one conversation and my whole life started unraveling. Back in the penthouse that night, Elise draped her arm through mine as she greeted my parents. Her smile was flawless. Her laugh echoed like champagne flutes clinking. She kissed my cheek like a PR-approved performance. I tried to smile back, tried to forget the girl with ink-stained fingers. But in my mind, I was still sitting on the floor of that bookstore, listening to May talk about how books were time machines and how no one ever really read poetry the same way twice. I kept hearing her voice when Elise was talking about our wedding colors. I kept thinking about that smudge on May's cheek and wondering what it would feel like to wipe it away. I should have told myself it was a fluke, that I'd never see her again. But I did. And next time, it was her who asked me to stay a little longer. The second time I went to see May, I told myself it was just to buy a book. It was a Wednesday afternoon, the kind where the air feels like it's still deciding whether to be spring or not. I had an early meeting about asset restructuring at the Rothmore offices. 2 hours of men in gray suits talking about upward mobility and cross-market potential like any of it meant something real. After that, I drove straight to Harper's Book Nook. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not Elise. Not my assistant. Not even Theo, my best friend since boarding school, who usually knew every move I made before I made it. I parked 2 blocks away like I was sneaking around, like I wasn't supposed to be anywhere near a street with potholes and graffiti hearts on brick walls. May was there, of course. She looked up as I walked in, and I swear, her smile could have lit the whole damn store. It wasn't big or flashy. It was soft, familiar, like she was genuinely glad to see me, not just being polite. That kind of smile is rare in my world. People usually smile because it's expected, or because they want something from you. May didn't want anything. At least not yet. "You're back," she said, teasing. "Let me guess. You finished Leaves of Grass in one sitting and now you're here for the sequel." I laughed, really laughed. It had been a while. "Thought I'd give Tolstoy a try," I said. "Maybe something light for a weekend." May rolled her eyes playfully and hopped off the stool. "Careful or I'll actually make you read War and Peace. No bookmarks. No cheating." That day turned into an hour. Then 2. Then somehow I was helping her rearrange a crooked shelf in the back while we talked about everything. Our favorite breakfast foods, her cat named Pumpkin, who hates everyone but her, and how she'd once tried to paint a mural on the side of her high school but got suspended halfway through. "Why a mural?" I asked. May shrugged. "I just wanted to leave something behind, you know? Something that wasn't just grades or a transcript. Something beautiful. That stuck with me. Probably more than it should have." We sat on the floor again, this time in the fiction aisle. She handed me a copy of The Secret Garden and said, "You should read this. Everyone should read this. Especially the part about growing things where things were once broken." I should have told her then. About Elise. About the tux fittings and the wedding planner who already had our Pinterest board memorized. But I didn't. I liked the way May looked at me, as if I were just Daniel. Not Daniel Rothmore III. Just some guy with a slightly crooked smile and bad opinions about movie adaptations. And honestly, I wanted to stay in that illusion a little longer. I started visiting her more often. Sometimes I brought coffee. Sometimes croissants. Once, I brought her a tiny potted plant, lavender, to match the scent I always seemed to carry home on my clothes after seeing her. She smiled so wide when I handed it to her that I thought my heart might just walk out of my chest and never come back. "Careful," she said. "Gifts like this can make a girl fall for you." I think she meant it as a joke, but my breath caught anyway. Of course, it wasn't long before the cracks started to show. One afternoon, I was sitting at the counter watching her ring up a college kid's used textbooks when my phone buzzed. I checked it absent-mindedly and felt my stomach twist. "Elise, dinner with my parents tonight. 7 sharp. Dad wants to talk numbers. Don't forget your suit." May looked up and caught the flicker of something on my face. "Everything okay?" I nodded too fast. "Yeah, just work." It wasn't a complete lie. My entire life was work. Work and obligations. Family ties knotted so tight they choked the air out of me. Elise's father had recently secured a massive joint deal with ours, a luxury housing project in Dubai, and our marriage was supposed to solidify the alliance. As my father put it, like we were merging kingdoms. I was supposed to smile, shake hands, seal the future, but all I could think about was May, her ink-stained fingers, the way she laughed like music in a place that smelled like old paper and daydreams. I went to that dinner, of course. I wore the suit, smiled at Elise's father, talked numbers, drank vintage wine and complimented the chicken roulade. But my heart was still sitting cross-legged on a bookstore floor, listening to a girl with lavender in her hair read me poetry. By the time April had fully unfurled into the city, I was living 2 lives. There was the life my family curated for me. Polished, predictable, pressed and steamed like the suits hanging in my walk-in closet. That life had dinner reservations and donor galas and a fiancé who always smelled like Chanel No. 5 and Ambition. And then there was her, May, the life I stole moments to live, in bookstore corners and coffee-stained conversations. She made everything feel unscripted, spontaneous, like the world was made of chances instead of contracts. I thought I could juggle both. I thought I could keep my feet in both worlds without falling. But lies grow roots, and eventually they trip you. Elise noticed first. I should have known she would. She's not the type to miss details. She once called off a birthday party because the florist brought peonies instead of ranunculus. That night, we were sitting at the Rothmore estate after a wine tasting, and she reached across the armrest of the velvet sofa to adjust my collar. "You've been distracted lately?" she said lightly, but her tone had a sharp edge underneath. "And don't say it's work. You've always been married to work." I forced a smile. "Just tired. Too many late meetings." Elise's eyes narrowed ever so slightly. "Well, you better rest up. The engagement party is in 2 weeks, and the investor brunch your father's planning depends on us looking in love." She paused. "You still want this, right?" I should have said yes. Instead, I hesitated. Just a breath. But it was enough. Her fingers froze on my collar. She didn't speak again. Just stood up and walked to the window, glass in hand, silhouetted by city lights and the ghost of a future I was no longer sure I wanted. The next day, I went straight to the bookstore after a meeting I barely sat through. May was leaning over a stack of returns, humming something soft and old, a tune I couldn't place. When she saw me, her eyes lit up like always, but this time her smile faded a little too quickly. "You okay?" she asked. I tried to answer, but I couldn't. I just stared at her, at the quiet defiance in her eyes, the way her hair curled around her ears like she forgot it needed taming. I wanted to tell her everything. About Elise. About my family's plans. About how I couldn't sleep because my heart had already made a decision and the rest of me was too afraid to follow. But I didn't. Because once I said it out loud, everything would change. Instead, I said, "Do you want to get out of here? Just for a little while?" She closed the shop an hour early. We drove with the windows down, the radio playing something folksy and wild. She had her feet on the dashboard, laughing at my terrible singing. We ended up at a small lake just outside the city, surrounded by pine trees and the scent of wet moss. The sun was sinking behind the water, casting everything in gold. May kicked off her shoes, walked barefoot to the edge of the dock. "Ever feel like you're playing a part in someone else's play?" she asked, watching the ripples. "All the time," I said. She turned and looked at me, serious now. "So what are you going to do about it?" I walked to her. Slowly, like the air between us had weight. I took her hand. "I don't know," I admitted. "But every second I'm here, I feel more alive than I've felt in years." We didn't kiss. Not that night. But we didn't need to. It was all there in the way her fingers lingered in mine. In the silence that wasn't awkward, just honest. In the way we both looked away at the same time because we knew. Something had started. Something big. And neither of us knew how to stop it. When I got home, Elise was waiting in the lobby of my building. She was wearing a navy trench coat and heels that could have cut glass. Her arms were crossed. Her eyes were stormy. "Where were you?" she asked, not bothering with greetings. "Out," I said simply. "Out." She repeated the word like it was a sin. "With who?" "Elise." "Don't lie to me, Daniel." Her voice cracked, just a little. "I know you. I've known you since you were 15. I can tell when your heart's not in the room with me anymore." That was the moment I realized Elise wasn't heartless. She was human. She'd built walls so high, even I forgot there was something soft underneath. She looked up at me and whispered, "Is there someone else?" I opened my mouth. I didn't say yes. But I didn't say no either. And silence, sometimes, is the cruelest truth of all. I didn't sleep that night. After Elise left the lobby, her heels echoing like the ending of something we hadn't even started properly, I sat in my car for hours. Engine off. Phone buzzing with texts I didn't answer. My mind running circles around itself. I wasn't supposed to feel this way. I wasn't supposed to love someone like May. She didn't know who I really was. I told her my name, sure, Daniel. But never Daniel Rothmore III. Never the part about the penthouse on Madison or the inheritance tied to my last name like a noose. She thought I worked in finance somewhere downtown, and I let her believe that. I wanted to be someone else around her, someone unbranded, undesigned, real. But you can only hold up a mask for so long. The next morning, May texted me. "Hey, sunshine. You left your sunglasses in my glove box. I'll be at the store till 6. Come get 'em or I'm keeping them forever." A smile tugged at my mouth even through the ache in my chest. She was sunshine, really? The kind you don't realize you've been living without until it hits you straight in the soul. I showed up at 5:30. The bell above the bookstore door chimed and she peeked out from behind a stack of gardening books. "Well, look who it is," she grinned. "Mr. Mystery." I didn't smile back. And that's when her grin faded. "Daniel," she asked quietly. "What's going on?" I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. I swear the whole room felt smaller. "I need to tell you something," I said, heart hammering. "And it's going to change everything." I told her. All of it. That my last name was Rothmore. That I was engaged to someone else. That my family expected a merger, not a marriage. That I'd been raised in a world where love was optional but legacy was law. May didn't interrupt. Didn't cry. Didn't yell. She just stared at me like she didn't know if she wanted to kiss me or hit me with a hardcover edition of Wuthering Heights. When I finished, I waited for her to say something. Anything. She finally took a step back. So I've been the other woman, she said softly. The part of your life you visit when you need to breathe. No, I said quickly. No, May. It wasn't like that. It's not like that. She tilted her head. Then what is it, Daniel? Because from where I'm standing, I was falling in love with a man who doesn't exist. Her words hit me like ice water. Because they were true. She didn't ask me to leave. But I did. Because I knew when I was no longer welcome, not in her world, not in that bookstore that had become my sanctuary. I stood outside for a while after, staring at the cracked sidewalk like maybe the answer was written in the pavement. My phone buzzed again. Elise, I assume you've told her by now. My father would like a word. I didn't reply. I went home, poured myself a drink, and realized I wasn't sure who I was anymore without May's eyes looking at me like I mattered more than my name. The next few days were a blur. My father called a meeting about the Dubai deal. Elise showed up at my office twice, wearing heartbreak like a new perfume, subtle, lingering. I avoided the bookstore, told myself it was for the best, that she deserved better, that maybe this was the universe correcting a mistake. But every night I thought about her. And every morning I checked my phone hoping she'd changed her mind. It was a Thursday afternoon when she finally reached out. Come by the store. There's something you forgot. No emojis. No hint of her mood. I got there in 20 minutes flat. She was behind the counter, arms folded. A manila envelope sat in front of her. What's this? I asked. My heart, she said simply. In a letter. Because if I talk, I'll probably just cry. I took the envelope, but I didn't open it. She met my eyes, and for a moment I saw everything, her confusion, her anger, but also something softer. Something that hadn't given up. I don't know how this ends, Daniel, she whispered. But I needed you to know how it felt to fall in love with someone I never really knew. And how it feels to still want him anyway. I read May's letter in my car. It was 6 pages, handwritten, filled with the kind of honesty that felt like being peeled open slowly and gently but with no anesthesia. She talked about how she'd never believed in fairy tales, but for a minute she thought maybe we were writing one. That even though her instincts warned her, she let herself hope. That she didn't hate me. But she didn't trust me either. And without trust, love was just a feeling floating in the dark with nowhere to land. She ended it with, if you want to be with me, really be with me, then show me you're willing to burn the map. No more secret doorways. No more 2 lives. 1 man. 1 choice. I'll be waiting, but not forever. That same night, I sat down with my father. We were in his study, mahogany shelves, whiskey decanter, a framed letter from Ronald Reagan on the wall. He was swirling a glass of scotch, looking pleased about something, probably a stock split or a partnership or the general feeling of control over everyone in a 20-mile radius. I heard from Elisa's father today, he said without looking up. He's pleased with how you handled the Dubai brief. You'll be speaking at the investor brunch next weekend. Oh, and your engagement announcement is going in the Times next Friday. I didn't answer right away. Dad, I finally said I can't marry Elise. The silence that followed was thunderous. He set his glass down. I'm sorry. I'm not going through with it, I repeated. I'm calling it off. He leaned back slowly in his leather chair, the kind that creaks like judgment. You're not a child, Daniel. We don't get to walk away from deals because of cold feet. It's not cold feet? It's a woman then. He said it like it was a diagnosis. Some pretty little detour you met while pretending to be someone you're not. I clenched my jaw. She's not a detour. She's the first real thing I've felt in years. My father scoffed. And what? You think you'll live in some bohemian flat above a coffee shop? That she'll understand what it means to be a Rothmore when the bills start stacking and the world gets ugly? You were raised for more than feelings, Daniel. You were raised for legacy. I stood. I don't want your legacy, I said, my voice steady for once. I want my life. He shook his head slowly, sadly, like I just announced I wanted to become a circus clown. If you walk away from this, he said, you walk away from everything. The trust. The company. The future we built for you. I turned to leave. And as I reached the door, he said, she better be worth it. I paused just for a second. Then answered without looking back. She is. I called Elise that night. She didn't answer at first. Then she texted, if this is about her, I don't want to hear it. I called again. She picked up. Elise. I said gently. I'm sorry. Truly. You didn't deserve this. There was a long pause. Then her voice came, quiet but sharp. I didn't deserve to be a footnote in your story. You were never that, I said. But we both knew this wasn't love. Not really. She was silent for a moment. Then said, tell her something for me. What? Tell her she won. But make sure she understands the game wasn't worth winning. Then she hung up. And just like that, a decade of planning and pretending came to a quiet, clean end. The next morning, I showed up at the bookstore at opening time. May was unlocking the door when I pulled up. Her hair was in a bun, and she was wearing a faded green sweater with tiny paint stains near the cuffs. She looked like sunlight and second chances. I stepped out of the car. She blinked at me. Daniel. I didn't say anything at first. I just walked up, held her hand, and slipped a small envelope into her palm. She opened it. Inside was a letter. 1 page. My handwriting. No more 2 lives. I chose you. I told my family. Called off the engagement. I don't know what happens next, but I know I want it to be real. With you. If you'll still have me. May looked up. Her eyes were glassy. Daniel. That's a lot to give up. I smiled. It's not giving up. It's trading up. And then, finally, she kissed me. It wasn't rushed or hungry. It was soft, like exhaling after holding your breath for years. And in that moment I knew. Everything I had lost was worth it. Because what I found in her was the kind of love that doesn't just change your world. It builds you a new one. The first week we lived together, I flooded the kitchen. Turns out, living outside a penthouse suite meant no one showed up to fix your plumbing when you stared at it hard enough. May stood there barefoot in water up to her ankles, laughing so hard she had to hold the counter. I was holding a wrench upside down and saying words that would have made my prep school Latin teacher faint. We're going to die in a puddle of irony, she said between gasps. I splashed a little water toward her in revenge, and before I knew it, we were soaked, covered in dish soap bubbles, and kissing like 2 kids who had nothing to lose. That's the thing no one tells you about choosing love over legacy. The hard part doesn't end when you make the choice. It starts. We found an apartment together, walk up, 4th floor, no elevator. The walls were thin, the heater made noises like it was haunted, and our view was mostly pigeons and the back alley of a bakery. But it was ours. I took a job at a local investment firm, nothing flashy, no corner office, just spreadsheets and steady hours. For once, I didn't dread Mondays. No pressure to outshine my father's name. No spotlight. Just a desk and the knowledge that I'd built this one small thing myself. May kept the bookstore. She added a little coffee corner, painted a mural on the back wall that said, "Stories save us." She let the neighborhood kids read for free, ran poetry nights twice a month, and started a little online shop to stay afloat. We were building something together, piece by piece. But the world doesn't let go of you that easily. Especially not the Rothmore world. It started with a photo. Someone snapped it. Me and May in the park, holding hands, eating ice cream like we were the cover of some indie rom-com. It made its way into the business section of a gossip blog. Rothmore heir spotted with mystery woman after breaking off Harrow engagement. May saw it first. I walked into the bookstore to find her holding her phone, her jaw tight. "Who took this?" she asked, her voice low. "No idea," I said honestly. "I didn't even know it existed." "Well, now it does. And half the city's going to see it." She wasn't angry, just afraid. I could see it in her eyes. "This isn't what I signed up for, Daniel." "I know," I said gently. "But I don't care what people say. None of it matters to me. It might not matter to you, but I'm not used to being watched, judged, gossiped about." I stepped closer, took her hands. "Then let them talk," I said, "because I know who I am now, and I know who I love. They can't take that from us unless we let them." It got worse before it got better. Reporters called. My old friends whispered. Elisa's mother sent a letter. Yes, an actual letter, expressing her deepest disappointment in my downward spiral into obscurity. My father didn't call, but my mother did. She wanted to meet. We met at a little cafe near Central Park. Neutral ground. She was wearing pearls and sunglasses, even indoors, like old habits could shield her from seeing how much had changed. She didn't order anything. Just sat down and said so. This is real. It's real, I said. Her name is May. She owns a bookstore. She's smart. She's kind. She makes me laugh when I don't feel like laughing. I love her. My mother blinked slowly. You've given up everything we built. No, I said, shaking my head. I gave up what you built. I'm building my own life now. There was a long silence. Then softly she said, is it enough? I smiled. For the first time, Mom, it's more than enough. She didn't say she approved. But she didn't walk out either. And that for my mother was practically a standing ovation. That night, I got home late. May was on the floor, surrounded by open books, cataloging a new shipment. I sat beside her, pulled her close, kissed the ink smudge on her cheek like a promise. You still glad you picked this life? She asked, teasing. Even if it includes water damage and nosy blogs? I pulled her tighter. I picked you. The rest is just bonus material. She leaned her head against me and whispered, then let's keep writing it. And that's what we did. Page by page. It had been 5 months since I walked away from the Rothmore legacy. In that time, May and I built something fragile but real, like a house made of light and laughter and second-hand furniture. I'd gotten used to mornings with burnt toast, cat hair on my black pants, and May humming while brushing her teeth. The kind of domestic chaos that, strangely, felt like peace. But peace doesn't last long when your past comes knocking. This time, it wasn't Elise. Or my mother. Or the press. It was Theo. Yes, that Theo, my best friend since we were 12, the one who made crude jokes at our prep school chapel and helped me survive Christmas parties with bourbon under the table. He showed up at the bookstore on a Wednesday in a camel coat and leather gloves like he'd stepped off a GQ shoot and into an indie rom-com by mistake. Daniel, he said, holding out a coffee like a peace treaty. We need to talk. We sat in the bookstore's back room while May ran inventory up front. She didn't know Theo, only that he was a name from a past I rarely spoke of. But she gave us space anyway. That's just who she is. Theo leaned forward, arms resting on his knees, and dropped the bomb. They want you back. I blinked. What? Rothmore Capital. The board. Your father. He grimaced. Okay, mostly your father. He wants to bring you in on the European branch expansion. London. Berlin. Full autonomy. He'll cut the leash. I laughed short and bitter. He said that. He said, and I quote, tell my son it's time to stop playing house and start playing legacy again. Of course he did. I sat back, heart pounding. Why now? Theo shrugged. Honestly? The Dubai project hit a snag. Elisa's family pulled out. He's scrambling. You're still the name people trust. He needs a Rothmore with a pulse and a clean suit. I didn't say anything. So Theo continued, it's not just an olive branch, Dan. It's a whole damn vineyard. The salary, the equity. It's real. You could take May with you. Live in London. Open your own firm eventually. This isn't about going back, it's about going forward. But with resources. He paused. Then added, he's offering you the keys. All you have to do is say yes. That night, I didn't tell May right away. I watched her dance around our kitchen to Stevie Wonder while flipping grilled cheese on a scratched-up skillet. I watched her laugh at Pumpkin, our temperamental cat who had somehow gotten his paw stuck in a cereal box. I watched her live, unfiltered, unrehearsed. And I thought about London. About suits and strategy and 70-hour workweeks. About boardrooms with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the Thames. About a life I was still good at even if I'd walked away. But also about bookstores. And lavender. And May's hand in mine. When I finally told her, we were in bed, her head on my chest. She was quiet for a long time after I finished. Then she asked, would you take it if I weren't in the picture? I hesitated. Maybe. She sat up, hugging her knees. Then you have to think about it. Seriously. Because I don't want to be the reason you hold yourself back. You're not. She cut me off gently. Daniel, I love you. But love isn't supposed to clip your wings. It's supposed to show you how to use them. My throat tightened. You wouldn't be holding me back, I said. You saved me. She smiled softly. You saved yourself. I was just the mirror. Over the next few days, I was quiet. May didn't push. She let me stew, scribble notes in the margins of books, stare out the window like I was waiting for the answer to appear in the sky. Theo texted once. He won't wait forever. Board meets next Friday. I deleted the message. Not because I decided, but because the decision was too heavy for a screen. One night, May found me at the bookstore after closing. I was sitting in the poetry aisle, reading the letter she'd written me months ago. She sat beside me, resting her head on my shoulder. "I won't go with you to London," she said softly. I turned, startled. She looked up at me with sad certainty. "My life is here. My store. My little kingdom. I've fought too hard to build this place to start over again. So it's me or them," I said, voice low. She shook her head. "No. It's you or you." And somehow I knew she was right. The morning of the board meeting, I stood in front of the mirror in the bedroom May and I shared, tying a tie I hadn't worn in months. The same navy silk one I wore to my college graduation. The one my father gave me with a clap on the shoulder and the words, "Welcome to the machine." I stared at myself. I looked older than I remembered. Not in a bad way, just more lived in. A little scuffed. A little real. The kind of face that had made hard choices. May stood in the doorway. She didn't say anything. Just watched. "You look like someone who knows something I don't," I said, adjusting the knot. She stepped closer. "I know you're going to do what's right. For you. Not for me. Not for them. Just for you." I swallowed hard. She didn't kiss me goodbye. Didn't say, "I love you." She just nodded, like this was the last mile of a race I had to finish alone. The board meeting was in a sleek, glass-walled tower overlooking the skyline. I'd walked those marble floors since I was old enough to wear dress shoes. Theo greeted me with a smirk and a clap on the back. "Nice tie. You look like one of us again." I didn't return the smile. My father was already seated at the head of the long oak table. 13 board members on either side, like a jury deciding the fate of my soul. He didn't stand. Didn't blink. "Daniel," he said. "Have a seat. Let's get started." But I didn't sit. I cleared my throat. "I won't be long. I just came to say thank you for the offer." A murmur went around the table. My father narrowed his eyes. "Is that all?" I nodded. "And to tell you I'm not accepting." Theo looked up from his notes. "You sure about that?" "Yeah," I said. "I am. I've spent most of my life walking in someone else's blueprint, wearing the name like a suit 2 sizes too big." I looked at my father. "I know what this world means to you. And I know you think I'm throwing it away." I paused, then smiled just a little. "But the truth is I'm finally choosing something. For once in my life, I'm not drifting. I'm standing still in the middle of a messy, beautiful, unfinished life, and it's mine." I turned to leave, then stopped at the door. "Oh, and tell Elisa's family I wish them well. I hope they find a merger that comes with champagne and love next time." I walked out of that building lighter than I'd felt in years. I didn't text May. Didn't call. I wanted her to see me first. The man who chose her, not just because he loved her, but because he knew who he was when he stood beside her. I bought flowers. Lavender, of course. I walked into the bookstore as she was rearranging the new arrivals table. She saw me. She saw the flowers. She saw everything. "You didn't go," she whispered. "I did," I said, stepping forward. "Just not to stay." Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Instead, she said, "You hungry? I made those little cinnamon things you like." And just like that, we were us again. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. We didn't buy a castle or sail off into the sunset. We paid bills, burned dinners, argued about laundry and movie choices. But we laughed more than we cried. We kissed more than we fought. We lived a life that was real. And every day, I woke up to her, to a cat curled at my feet, to the smell of books and burned toast, and I never once missed the marble floors. Because love, real love, isn't loud or shiny. It's a hand on your back when the world feels too heavy. It's a partner who sees you, really sees you, and stays. It's a bookstore. A lavender plant. A second chance. And the choice to take it.